Red is on.
Red is run.
Red is
Yeah,
on.
I think how Joe says it, it's a great job.
Just laughing how many times we've gone through the meeting and discovered there was no fuel.
Okay, so welcome to the Selectmen meeting of Thursday, November 7th, 2019. We're all here, except for Joe Jessman, who cannot be with us this evening. If we can all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Different things. So if you want to bring the minutes of Thursday, October 24th to the table for discussion.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you remember last week, the board decided they wanted to hold off on looking at these minutes until I checked the audio, because there was a discussion about whether or not there was direction to me to talk with Milestone. We did check with on the video, and there was not direction to do that. So now I think if you just want to look at the minutes and if you have any changes.
Page 1, last paragraph. Second sentence says Selectman Scanlon asked for clarification of what Selectman Dawson and Fogg wanted for the field, but there's nothing stating what Selectman Fogg and Dawson wanted. So if I'm not seeing the video or being here, I have no clue what's transpiring. I think we need some details on keeping the field and who should cover the cost.
Okay. So add the details of the conversation.
A little bit more detail.
All right.
I kind of have a question, not so much a correction, maybe it is. So a couple of times it says in here, like on page 1, second and last paragraph at the end, which was not in the purview from the selectmen to the committee.
Is this on the first page?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is on October
Yeah.
24th. So where does that come from? Because in my mind, if they're directed to design the police building and get her done, and they have to move the football field to do that, why isn't that part of the project? Why isn't that part of their purview?
So I would just say that if you recall, the selectmen drafted a letter with a scope of work that went to the police building study committee. I had that last week. I'm not sure I have it this week, but it was a letter that you all signed to and specifically the chair had asked for that letter, so they knew exactly what it was that they were supposed to be doing. And within that letter, there was no discussion of a ball field. It was all had to do with the police station and what they were supposed to be doing relative to that.
And maybe this is a conversation for another time, not the minutes, but I would argue that of course it is, because the ball field is being affected by the building of the police station. Like in that we have a second driveway cut as a result of the police station. We're creating a parking lot for the ball field as a result of the police station. So all these things are taking place. that don't just have to be the building. Like I said, maybe this is
Yeah,
a
I
conversation
think what we
for
need
later.
to do is we really need to address this whole thing as a package of what we're gonna do with the ball field and how we're gonna fit all this in.
Well, I'm objecting to the language that's in there, because I'm disagreeing.
So maybe if the language said, this was not specified in the scope of work that the
The
selectmen said.
initial scope
And
of
I would
work.
argue that it is. Because
No, but-
we didn't
well,
say
like-
put in 2 driveways. I would say, can we just leave it out?
Well, no, but that's a statement that I had made too. It was not in the purview of the original one that we said, and was something that was said at that meeting. These are the minutes of what was said at the meeting. We need to address
Well, I
it.
see, and I don't remember that being said.
I distinctly remember saying it.
John,
Pat, I'm sorry.
we initially talked about this when we were setting up the ground rules for the police building subcommittee. However, and I really feel strongly about this, and I thought a lot about this since I read the minutes a couple of days ago. The Board of Selectmen is the one that dropped the ball because we didn't put it in the letter for the committee to pursue. So in the letter of the charge of what the committee is supposed to do, it's not in there. It should be in there. You know, we as a board, we're kind of all thinking that yes, it should be there, but it wasn't in there. So we really need to pursue the ball field, but we need to find a way to pursue that. But it's not in their purview as the charge in the letter that we sent out to the police building committee. I've read that letter several times, so it's not in there.
Well, like I said, that's probably a discussion for a later time because I disagree with you. But right now, this isn't in here as a statement. It doesn't say John Scanlon said. The Board of Selectmen have never agreed to this statement. Okay, a letter was sent out. We're not all on the same page as far as what the charge was, but this is not a statement that somebody made.
Well,
It's a comment that's added to this. So Kevin didn't,
no, this was
It's
said
not
at
saying-
that meeting.
okay,
I don't.
right here when I'm reading this, it's not written in as John Scanlon mentioned.
Well, we will go back to the minutes.
I'm sorry, but
But no, that's fine, I understand, but it seemed like from the last meeting, the general consensus was, and it was not unanimous, but it seemed like there was a feeling that it was an accurate statement. But if what you're looking for is it very specifically to say that and for each selectman to weigh in on that, we can certainly go back and have John's comments added, Joe's comments added, Peter's, yours.
well, no, I mean, if somebody stated and it was their opinion, that's one thing. But in both places, it's added as just kind of a statement.
So, Peter.
So on the top of the second page, milestone, however, you know, it's not a, that's the rest of the sentence. There was never any discussion with them or the architect, period. Why do we add, and it is not in the committee's purview to rebuild the field?
Peter?
So,
I agree with Pat that we dropped the ball. However, I think if you look at the vast majority of any multi-million-dollar projects, there are always addendums throughout the phase. Oh, we forgot about this, can we add it? So all we're looking at is, can we do an addendum now to see what the costs are? You can throw it in the project as an addendum, or throw it in depending what we get for results.
Well, right now, what I'm trying to do is get through the
So-
minutes and what was actually said on
if you-
Thursday, October 24th, 2019, not what we would like to do in the future or anything like that. So if we can stick to the accuracy of what was said on Thursday, October 24th, 2019, and then go back.
Get the tape then.
Mr. Chairman?
Pat, go ahead.
So Kevin actually, the paragraph starts out, Kevin talked about the committee's meeting with the Parks Commission and the commission's expectation and the Police Building Study Committee putting the ball field back to the original condition. And he sat here in front of the table, and then he held out the charge, the actual paper, the letter that we sent him with the charge in it. So, and he spoke, and those were his words. It was not in the purview. He said, this is not in the purview of my charge, with the paper in front of him. So we have to word the minutes to reflect what the chairman of the committee that sat before us in the board here last week saying. So he's telling the board that he has a letter from the Board of Selectmen that says, it doesn't say it's in the purview, and he used those words, that it's not in my purview, in my task, that the ball field put back to the, nothing about the ball field. And that's what he's saying. So that's why these minutes reflect which was not in the purview from the selectmen to the committee. So I'm not sure
And that's
how
my,
we could word it to
that's my point. It could say, and Kevin stated,
okay,
that was not in, so leave out which and put Kevin stated that was not in the purview from the selectmen to the committee.
That'll work.
that works.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now it
Makes
becomes a
sense.
Now it
statement
becomes a
that Kevin
statement,
said.
right, okay,
It's
that's
not just
easy.
hanging there,
Right,
like on the second page, again,
yeah.
it's like hanging there.
Why,
So there's a dash and then it's just hanging there,
Kevin's-
okay,
so what Kevin stated,
right. That makes sense.
Yes.
where was it on the second page?
Right at the top.
Very top.
Okay,
I would just put a period after architect.
Yeah, it's already stated there, so it just seems overkill.
yeah, just put a period, right. And then just, it's already stated, do we need, and it's not in the committee's purview to rebuild the field, because Kevin had already stated that.
They just asked me to remove it, so I did.
Got it. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
It's quiet down at that end.
Let's see, Tim gave the cost of $600 more for the expansion of the NVR cost.
And then we
To
made a
allow
second
for- To allow for additional
cameras, to allow for
More.
that's not
expansion.
worded right. You're right, John.
Let's see, Tim gave the cost of $600 to allow for,
The expansion of more cameras.
Where, can you,
Selectman Constantino moves, second by Selectman,
where are you at?
I'm sorry.
last
Page
paragraph.
2,
Page 2?
the third paragraph there,
Third
down at the bottom.
Okay,
Because he'd gotten a cost, it would be $600 more to go with the 16 camera NVR,
Right.
which allows for expansion.
so I'm in the third paragraph that starts Selectmen.
Last
Constantino.
sentence.
Up, next one up.
Okay, all right.
Senior citizen.
Last
Second by Joe Justman to remove the table as Tim gave the cost of $600
More,
more.
More for,
the expansion of 16 camera
16.
NVR,
NVR.
N as in no, B as in boy, R.
and then,
Okay,
and cross out to cover the shed, because we didn't specifically say that.
okay. So expansion of 16 camera NBR.
Yeah,
Okay,
Cost.
cost.
And then take out to cover the
Okay.
shed.
Gotcha. All right.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
motion and a second. Any more discussion, or is anybody still perusing? I guess it's a little, I'm confused, maybe everybody else can.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if you would want to hear from Mr.
We haven't
Cropsey.
voted yet, Jeannie.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying move the minutes to later on in the,
Oh,
I think
Well, we
we're
could
about
always
to-
vote on this set. I would
Okay.
vote.
The only thing,
he's got a question about something.
I do
Yeah.
on page 3 or 4, if we go down to town administrator report, Sugar Maple on the Island, it said, accept new sky bid of $1,800 to move the tree, discussion, cut and grind, stump, and farm shouldn't be removed. That just shouldn't be removed.
what's, we're on this first 7 minutes, right?
Yep, the ones we just made a motion to amend, we're in the discussion part of the motion.
And where are you at?
I was looking on page 3 or 4,
Uh-huh,
under town administrator report,
okay,
4th bullet,
okay.
and where it says shouldn't be removed, it looks confusing, what shouldn't?
Selectmen continues to remove the tree, discussion, cut and grind down stump, confirmed, shouldn't be removed. Huh,
Oh, I know what
That
this
was
discussion was, that Catherine had, when you had questioned whether or not it should take down, remove the stump going down so long, and Catherine had said, no, it shouldn't remove that because you'd be removing the roots.
so just, if I just,
Yeah, we
just
just
take out,
just
should
cross
be
it out,
removed.
right.
Okay,
Okay.
That was the discussion on that.
okay.
And Catherine had a question.
No, mine's on the other minutes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So,
I was reading that.
I'm going to call a question, motion here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. So, I'll table the rest for now, Mr. Cropsey, come up.
Thank you. For the minutes, Jim Cropsey, live on Sanborn Road, and I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. And we had a meeting on a Monday plus ago now, about a stream crossing initiative that the state has, and I wanted to talk about that to start with. And in particular, the stream crossings are bridges and culverts. Typically, when they first went in, they were done very quickly, and there wasn't the ability that the Department of Public Works and the state had at the time to size the culverts properly back in the 50s. They didn't have that capability. We do now. We have the math, and we know approximately what the storm contents are. So in this instance, Tilton is in pretty good shape, because we've had a 100-year flood calculation on the Conservation Commission for years now, and we don't have too many culverts that overtop, even though we've had a number of, I guess we'd call them 500-year storms. But I do recall a couple of events, and in one instance, it was down on Pikes, where where now the Dunkin' Donuts is, and by Franklin Savings and the diner there.
That Gulfport?
Yes.
That's Gulf Brook, yeah. And that overtopped, but I don't believe it overtopped 3 and 11. So the concerns are that 5 major ones, that there be damage to the roads, which is public property. There could be property damage to people's houses if the culverts are undersized. It backs up, it floods into people's basements and outbuildings potentially. The storm resiliency is basically a calculation that you can't get through Emergency vehicles can't get through, the more the water is backed up, they have to be rerouted, or they have to wait, or you have to take a different vehicle. Public safety is an issue because regardless of how many times public DPW, Department of Public Works may put out a sign says, or we put out a notice, don't go through a road that's overtopped by the water, because there could be nothing there. What you see is water. A lot of people elsewhere have died because they tried to cross one of these overtopping events. And the final one is that there be segmented habitat. So what the state is looking for is to try to categorize these culverts throughout the town. It hasn't been done for Tilton, and they're both public and private to be worked on, and to try to reconnect the habitat if that's necessary, because the primary species is the brook trout, and there's concern with brook trout segmented populations. So there is money if we come across certain species. So in my email that you, I believe, have a copy of and can peruse, there's no money specifically if we don't have any listings in the hazard management plan. So what we should do is itemize those that are an issue. If they're a state culvert, then the state, instead of just coming in and replacing in kind what's there, they would then, if it's an overtopping culvert, they would be obligated to actually follow through with the 100-year flood plan, which the Conservation Commission has. There are certain times when it's beneficial for the wildlife to have the culverts segmented. So there may be some instances where they'd still design it so that it would remain a segment. And that's because the brook trout have a number of species that have been introduced that are, the brook trout are food for, essentially. And that would wipe out whatever remaining brook trout population there might be. But there is money for this, both at the state level, federal level, through private organizations. Trout Unlimited has volunteered that they would help with Fish and Game to do the fish surveys. But to start the whole process off, we probably want to discuss this with Kevin in Public Works and come up with a list that maybe he has of those that have been topped over. And then especially the state ones, if anything's been designated to be replaced, so that they'll do it in a proper fashion.
Absolutely.
Are you suggesting that we have a program where we go out and replace those?
No.
Or as we replace culverts, we replace them with culverts sized according to this program?
It would be nice, but first we have to come up with they have to be evaluated first.
Oh, yes, but that's what I mean,
Yeah,
for this program.
yeah, per this program. We don't have to actually fund it if they're not, if they're private, there's no obligation of the town. A lot of the culverts that we have in town are actually state, and that's, I know from my Conservation Commission hat, that the state does not have to come before us, and they replace with culverts in kind. So we potentially are not getting what we really need to have in this town. And if we have these culverts itemized, if those that are hazards are indicated, then the state is obligated to do it in the according to our plan and not their plans.
Yeah.
in the recent past, we've had 250 and 500-year storms, so I would say if we went back to those and the ones that overtop there, those are the first ones to look at, because everything else seems to have been able to sustain the 100-year. And then do a program as you replace, then you can size at that point. But, you know, if it isn't broken, it seems.
Right, if it's not
And
broken.
like about the only, one of the obvious ones would be Route 3 right there by the diner. I can remember one time, I think it was coming over the top, you know. But also, I'm not sure if that was straight rainwater also. The other problem is keeping the debris out. Because that is what happens with the heavy rains.
Yes,
The debris
and,
plunge.
and that can block the culvert.
Yeah.
There are also culverts that are probably need to be replaced because they've deteriorated to the point where they've rusted out. I've had one of those that happened, you know about that one in front of Riverfront.
Yeah, Northfield just experienced it there.
Yeah, so, and I called you in on one probably about 8 years ago that I thought was sewer, and it turned out to be stormwater. So, you know, we would try to get on top of this instead of being inactive, which would be a little proactive.
Doesn't
Yeah.
force, I'm sorry.
How would you determine on a private culvert, how would you determine how, if it were private, number one, and then how would you go about getting them to update it to a 50 or 100-year flood?
Well, I think in that instance it's strictly voluntary because, and it is, and ends up being a public-private partnership. We're talking about the federal government, the state, the town of Tilton, and the property owners would all have to cooperate in this. So I think it would behoove them.
Their money's available for that?
But also,
Also for privates, yes.
Okay.
if the private one is affecting adjacent property owners, that's where they'd have the problem.
Okay.
Yes, exactly, and
Then it goes through the
if it's affecting the fisheries, then money can come from the Fish and Wildlife Service as some grant matching money for that. So it's a long process, but it has to be started somewhere.
Yep. Yep.
Catherine, did you have something?
So, these culvert replacements would be for both handling 50, 100-year storm events, big rain events, let's call them, and for habitat, for fish, wildlife, whatever. Who does that examination? Who determines what is the right size?
It's calculated. There are, on the state website, they know approximately what the watershed is at any point of road crossing, so that they know approximately what size it should be. Whether or not it should be changed is subject to a number of different criteria, including what's going on with the fisheries. The crossing could still be designed so that the non-native species that are preying upon the brook trout still can't get through the culvert, but yet it has a better storm event capability, sized for, let's say, as you say, the 100-year storm instead of the 50-year storm, but done in such a way that the brook trout stay where they are and the invasive or non-native species that prey upon them stay where they are, but it's still segmented to protect the brook trout. But that's all a design situation.
I did briefly look at that website. There's a lot of information there. Good Lord.
Oh, yeah.
But who actually does the calculation? Is that someone from DES? Is that Public Works? Do they have a formula that they use? And for example, Bamford Brook, which comes down out of Sanford, crosses Lancaster Hill Road, State Road, crosses Route 3, State Road, crosses Brook Road, State Road, and finally enters into Silver Lake. I'm familiar with it because it crosses over property that I own.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times that brook has flooded over Route 3 and Brook Road. In fact, I have a picture of it flood, well, I guess that was during the hurricane, it probably doesn't count. But interestingly enough, it wasn't during a 50 or 100-year storm event. It was during, this just thunder downpour and so much water, and it just happened to be timed with spring water from snow melt. And it flooded over Route 3 and Brook Road. How do they take that, if they're not familiar with the brook, and the majority of the year, it's just a little tiny babbling brook, how do they come up with a formula for that? I'm just so curious.
Well, part of it is how much acreage that drains into it. And the calculations do change, and that's part of the public and private partnership of this, that will probably end up, or with the public, when I say we, the public-private partnership, whatever group is set up to do this, will have to hire engineers to be able to make those calculations. I mean, we have the ability to make them, it's just that we've been very complacent with just saying, well, it's a 10-inch culvert, or it's an 18-inch culvert. We'll put the same thing back again. It's worked okay. You're citing a couple of overflows that I'm not familiar with, but again, it's obviously undersized if it's happened within very recent memory, the last couple of years.
Well, they're all anomalies. One time it was because Peter said debris got in the culvert. But, so there's no partnership with the state in this. In other words, there's no one at DES we call that would come out and assist us in evaluating these culverts.
As I understand it, and I might be incorrect, it's a combination. DES actually has a list of culverts there, or no. DOT, sorry, has a list of culverts that they're scheduling for replacement. So they have engineers, but they're going to replace within kind. Unless we specify that, the Route 3 Bamford Brook has overflowed 3 times in the last 10 years, we might want to look at that one and get some calculations. Now DOT has to look at those calculations and do them.
So in reading the email earlier and actually looking at the mitigation plan, who actually updates that? Is that the conservation or is that the planning board that updates the mitigation plan? Because that clearly, because of the conversation back and forth, needs to be updated. It doesn't.
I think it's the selectmen.
Combination.
When I looked at the original hazard mitigation plan, it was approved by the selectmen, and it looked
It was
like,
approved, yeah.
I know, but I
And
think
it
it
looked
was
like there were
worked
changes.
by the planning board.
Yeah.
okay.
And in reading your information here, it sounded like, is the first step really, in order to get that funding, is to update
Right.
the hazard mitigation plan?
That was my next question. That was where I was going with the question. That seems to me that would be the first place, is to start with the mitigation plan and get that rolling so that we can have a substantial foundation for the funding. And then as we update and go along with the plan for, looking at these places and culverts and replacing them, we have that plan in place so that we can just write the grants and go forward with them so that we know that we've got this in place, because this is going to take a while to update. This is very outdated.
Yeah.
I started to peruse it this afternoon, and I had to admit I did fall asleep, but it was outdated. I mean, it is. But it also mentions Lakes Region Planning, so I would imagine that they had some type of input into it.
Yes.
So
I would imagine
we
that's
need to
correct.
look, maybe we could put that into like a workshop type of thing that we can have the board look into, maybe conservation, planning, and Lakes Region get together and say, we need to update this mitigation. Maybe that's something Leanne might want to look into. Okay.
I think other towns have done this, so Lakes Region Planning should be familiar with
Mhm.
what it is that needs to be done, and probably better than I do, and we do here, of how to go about doing it.
Mhm.
So it's probably a good start too.
So if we have some type of a committee or some type of a group that wants to update this, you want to be a part of that? Update the mitigation plan?
I can probably assist with that as a liaison from the Conservation Commission.
You can consider that.
So you'd like, the board would like me to talk to Leanne about updating the hazard mitigation plan?
Mhm.
When it was created, there were a lot of entities that took part in that document. As health officer, I think the chief's even, but there's a lot of components to it.
Oh, yes,
So
absolutely.
it's a pretty complicated document. Took us quite a long time to create it.
So yes, and I would say yes, ask Leanne to
Well,
start
I would-
looking into it and maybe have Catherine be our representative to it. You've been a part of it.
Join the club.
All the
Somebody
people,
sticks their foot in?
all the people that would be involved in it, we start taking a look at it.
Yeah, because it would be public works, it would be police, it would be
Ab-
conservation.
Get the highlighters out and
Yep,
suggest changes, and I think, so Leanne would be the one to spearhead
to
it.
coordinate it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know that we actually have to do an entirely new hazardous
It's just that section.
mitigation plan.
Just update it.
We
The
do have to
section that has to
update
do
that
with
section.
wetlands. Yeah.
And as I understand it from how they've described it, other towns actually have, like if Banford Brook overflows, they have a previously designated detours, because they know where it overflows the road, so they can set up a detour. But if it's overflowing all three crossings, that becomes a bigger problem.
Peter?
So if Route 3 overflows, who's responsible for the detours, the town or the state, because it's their road?
State.
State officially would be responsible, I would think, but it's going to, it potentially could reroute people over a private, not a private road, but a town road eventually. And
Most
yes,
likely,
it's undersized because the state undersized it. But the state doesn't necessarily, they're not necessarily going to size it properly unless we've got it in our plan.
They're not gonna fix it till it's broke.
Exactly.
And we'll do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and, right.
You gotta wait for someone to go through it, and then they'll do it.
Or somebody dies, and then unfortunately, but we don't want, we want to try to get it before that.
Definitely.
Okay,
Thanks,
so,
Jim.
so that's what I will do, is ask our land use coordinator to look at updating that section of the hazard mitigation plan and figuring out what that's gonna take. And I'll report that back to you.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good plan.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Jim.
And I think Kevin, the Public Works, would also have to know, because he's run into it, which ones.
Absolutely.
Well, she would make that connection, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Thanks for coming in, Jim.
Sure, thank you.
Oh. A couple of minutes in between here. I skipped over it. I'd like to come forward, we've got on behalf of the Tilton Northfield Rotary Foundation is sending check number 767 for the amount of $5,776.27, so the town may use this money for its original intended purpose, to post and put on the summer fair. This was the exact amount given to the Tilton Northfield Rotary by the Tilton Main Street Committee. So we have this check. We have to vote to accept that.
I thought we were using that money for something else that the both of you had asked if we could get it.
It's going towards summer fair. That was its original intended purpose when it
you
was.
asked us, when you came before us.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the donation, $5,776.27.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We also have another one. This is a donation from the Halloween Industry Association. The check is for the amount of $1,000. I guess they heard of our zombies and were quite pleased and want to support the carrying on of zombies and that type of thing. It doesn't say specifically what it was for.
It's just for Halloween in general.
Donation for celebration.
Yep.
There we go, it's right there. So I'll make a motion that we accept it.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved unanimously? Now, while we're still on donations, we have a check from Walmart to the Tilton Police Department as a donation to the Clear Conference training. So I'll make a motion, we accept that.
Second?
How much is that for?
$2,000. So motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? So moved unanimously. So that's great. You know, it's everybody's stepping forward, the businesses here, the Halloween Industry Association, Rotary Club. It's great to have that community involvement. People making donations to help support that. Next thing we have at 5:30 is the chief for the 2020 budget.
Down
And
there.
a technical problem, and that was kind of around it.
Yeah, I got it. I did get it. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome back, chief. Where's your tan? No, just kidding.
It's cold, but hopefully it's on the downward slope. So each year, just to recap, Tim and I got together early this year in the budget season. I wanted to get it done early and soon. And so we spent several hours, and what we do is we go line by line and we look at kind of a 3-year average on each line and, identify what we might be able to forecast as any increases or decreases, and make sure that we put enough money in each line that, we're not going to fall short at the end of the year. And so it's been a pretty successful partnership each year, and seems to work well. So we did it again this year, and the only numbers that kind of get backloaded towards the end of the budget season are obviously the benefits, health, retirement, that sort of thing. And so Tim just gave it a final update today with fresh numbers where everything's at as of today. So once we come down, I guess starting at the top, shooting past officers' wages. I don't know if Tim, if you need to talk about anything there before we get.
That's my first question. Is the 65-55 the ninth officer January through town meeting time?
So it's actually just over 71,000 for January through December 2020.
No, I'm talking the additional officer that was approved.
Right. So anticipating that he's going to graduate
The 20th.
The 20th
December 20th.
Then the rate that he'll be at starting in January. So he's at a lower rate now because of an uncertified rate. He'll be at a higher rate starting in January. So the total cost during the year would be $71,000.
But he wasn't in last year's budget. We had someone else in that place that was a higher number, right?
No, he's
No.
higher.
Yeah, he was the ad.
He's an extra.
Originally, when they were talking about hiring someone, they had
Mhm.
someone else in mind, and the cost was actually higher for the year, primarily because of the wage. That was a certified officer, and also they had, I believe, a different plan.
Health plan.
A couple of years before that, we had someone in this place, did 920, and that was at a high rate.
But the full
That was a
year
certified
cost for
rate.
the new hire is $71,200.
But like last year, it would have been,
Yeah, we were looking at a much higher cost originally.
Okay.
For the original hire that they had, because they had someone identified, but that.
Yeah, fell through. Right.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so he came in basically at a brand new rate.
1750,
Yeah.
so uncertified.
Okay. So just starting with overtime, we feel with the ninth officer, that we can kind of maintain that request of 45,000. And some of the changes that Jesse's made in the court overtime has helped a little bit as well. But being full staff definitely makes a difference. When we've been full staff in the past, we've been able to kind of stay within the amount of money that we have for overtime.
Yeah, we still spent 10,000 over what we budgeted last year.
Yeah, and I've kind of looked at the last 5 or 6 years with staff and how it relates to overtime, and you can see the years that we're down 2 bodies, we end up being higher in overtime by about 10,000, and when we're full staff, we actually some years come in either flat or a little bit under.
Well, there was also a period of time where there was a supervisor out, and so that caused overtime for other supervisors coming in.
Good,
It wouldn't have accounted for
Right,
the whole
you're
10,000,
right.
but
right,
it was significantly more than.
but at a higher rate.
At a higher rate,
Yep.
yeah, trying to fill sergeants.
And that's almost 2 months.
Yep, got it.
And then coming down to grant expenses, I guess below wages, the cap does,
Can we just go back up to
Yes.
part-time wages?
sure,
How many part-time officers do we have on the roster right now?
right now,
We have 3. How many are active part-time right now?
One of them's been pretty active because he's still, learning and training.
Yeah.
And then the other two, they've been fairly active compared to years in the past.
What's fairly active? Once a
So-
month, twice a month,
No, probably
once
once
a
a
year?
week or every other week.
Once
One's
a
not getting vacation, is he?
No.
No one's getting the.
Yeah, no, I saw that last
Not
night.
yet.
No, in
Keep an eye on that.
yeah, surprisingly, one of them has a second full-time job. He's been getting down here quite a bit. And the other one, he likes a regular schedule, and if we give him a regular schedule, he'll come in and do it. But he likes to know in advance, he's retired and playing stuff with his wife and stuff like that. But they've been doing pretty good. I haven't heard any complaints from the cap about it.
So we have 3 part-timers, and 2019 was 17,000 expense.
15.
No, line up above it, that.
I'm sorry, line 15,000, and then 9,000 for a 3-year average, 11,000 in 2018, and 8,000 and 8,000 in 2016 and 17, and so you're putting in 14,000. And we have active, part-timers are the ones that cut down on the overtime as well as a full force.
They do, yeah. We rely on them a little bit less when we're full staff. It's when we fall short. If we're down a person or someone gets injured off duty, then we need to rely on them more, especially if it's an officer versus a sergeant. So the cap and administrative sergeant have been scheduling to come in on, the holidays, the parades, stuff like that. I know, like, during the summertime, Old Home Day, they both came in for that. So that helps out a little bit there. Are you thinking it's a little too low with that?
I don't think we rely much on I think we rely on our part-timers less than we should, and then we rely on more of our overtime wages to cover more often than we should, because we don't have adequate part-timers that we can dip into. Most agencies have a lot more part-timers that are available at different hours. We have one retired that loves to know way in advance. You're not going to know way in advance if somebody gets injured and are out for 2 weeks and we need a part-timer to backfill. And we have one that's up north that comes down, has a full-time job, so on and so forth. You just explained it to me. So why aren't we filling that gap in between, which will lessen the overtime salaried PD salaries overtime line with the part-time wages? It's going to be a lot cheaper to us.
So, yeah, I think we did talk about it at the command staff level, and we knew that we had to recently go through a pretty long training process for a new part-timer that came in with no police experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know who that is. So, plus we also were in the midst of hiring and training a full-time officer.
Mm-hmm.
So we just felt like at this time right now, we needed to focus on those two. It would be nice, in the past, I've had 5 part-timers, and chiefs before me have had a couple more than I've had. If you get the right ones, they're worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely. We've had up to 5 or 6 part-timers in it. This is not a new conversation that I've had when the budget comes out. It's always, I've always been pro part-timers because they fill in the gap where, you're not paying somebody $40 or $50 or $60 for overtime, whereas you can pay $16 and $18 for a part-timer to fill in that gap. But we're not looking for certified part-timers to fill in, even if you had them from another town to come in part-time, you're not looking for them, and you haven't been for a long time. So I just think that $14,000, and then you up the I mean, you didn't up it, but $45,000 for salaried overtime, I think that we should seriously look at that and then look at the part-time wages. That would help. I think when looking at the staffing of it, there's a gap there. My opinion.
I agree with Pat, with our extra officer. We should not be increasing either of those lines.
If I may, there is somewhat of an anomaly, because I used to believe that as well, but because of the collective bargaining agreement, each officer, they're entitled to a certain amount of court time. I know that there have been some adjustments in what they're going and testifying to, but there are, each officer has a certain amount of overtime, it seems, every year, regardless of shift coverage or, other types of things. So where you would think you're adding people, you would have less overtime, you're actually going to have a certain amount of overtime carried forward with sort of a minimum amount of overtime. I've never been able to figure out what that number is, but just the general concept works like that, unfortunately.
Except I'm remembering the promises that were made if we hired this extra person.
I think, and looking at the overtime line, Tim and I both talked about it, and we wanted to keep that the same. Part-time wages, we added a little bit more, feeling that once this new part-timer came off training, he would be working more on his own. But it is nice to get back to what we're seeing, and it's not just here, it's talking to chiefs all over the places. The millennials that are coming into law enforcement now are, they call them the 40-hour generation. They don't want to work a lot of overtime. They like to have their time off. So it becomes a challenge for departments to get them to work overtime anyway and work details. It becomes really hard. I hear that from a lot of different chiefs. And so they're always kind of looking for a good certified part-timer, and they're always putting the feelers out ongoing all the time. But they just haven't been hearing the feedback that, like, Officer Smith from Samerton would love to come and work part-time for you. Those kind of things we're just not hearing. They're doing their 40 hours and wanting to go home. It's just the baby boomers, you could shut us off, kind of thing. But they're definitely always looking. And if we get one, I'll definitely be coming to the board.
The wages in general have lagged way behind the part-timers. The review of wages over the years. So where the collective bargaining agreement covers people every 3 years, so the review of wages, some of those wages took a long heading, but they were brought up not too long ago. But I think to attract certified part-timers, maybe that's something that could be looked at too, if that's a competitive wage for a part-time certified officer. So,
Yeah, we're hearing it's a little bit more in the towns around us, by $2 or $3 more for the part-timers. So again, it's to try.
Well, it should be looked in then.
Yeah.
It should be looked at because it's still going to be cheaper to us.
Right. Oh yeah.
as an overtime.
So look into it. Yeah, that would be something. That would be something for all of us to look at. If that needs to be done, it needs. It would still help us out in the long run.
Either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Let's see if I can jump down. Tim and I really tried to keep everything as close to level and flat as possible without shortfalling any lines in particular. And we looked at, talking with Lisa, different ways we can save in lines like office supplies, and she's made some changes in-house that are starting to help.
Yep. Another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The PD dues and SOU, doesn't the Tilton School reimburse you for that? SOU, or did they stop doing that?
They don't, and we actually, the line now just mostly covers a lot of the dues that detectives have. We don't have any SOU specific dues in there anymore, so we don't get reimbursed.
So you're not in the association, I know you don't have any, but any bodies that are associated with, but you don't pay, you just
We
pay
don't have to
dues?
Yeah, we don't have to pay dues.
You don't have to pay the dues,
Mhm.
okay.
So
Should that line be retitled?
you could just
So
call
take
it,
it out of there.
you could probably just call it dues.
Would the board like to do that?
Mm-hmm,
Mhm.
yeah, because it's misleading.
And then flipping over to the other side, PD equipment maintenance and repair, and you can see there it covers the TAP program with TASER and our Cellbrite license, which is how we do all our forensic investigation on cell phones. And
These are all the contracts, right? That we have now currently with everybody?
Well, apart from things that are in the IT budget, like the body cameras, this is for the actual Zapsat
the
tasers.
TASER.
Yeah, in the Cellbrite, the Cellbrite license is a contractual thing, right, each year? Right,
Right.
okay.
And it would cover like repair of our copier.
No, I
You have that
cover,
one?
yeah, I cover the copier. The vehicle inspection machine is covered down at Public Works, because that's an expense that is primarily for the police department. And
So
that's
you
a-
take it out of your, it's in your budget, but they have it down there?
No, this is in the chief's budget, the vehicle inspection machine. It's a monthly license that we have to pay for the inspections.
Oh, I didn't know it was in the police budget, okay.
Yeah, it's been there. The Cellbrite license in the past has been a donated item
By
from
3M.
from 3M.
Yeah.
However, due to looking at 2020 and maybe other donations that would be made, we felt it was best to put it in the operating budget under this line. So that accounts for the majority of the change
Mhm.
in that line.
Advertising, we have it in there. It's if we start to push out advertising for a position, then we'll use that line. If not, it doesn't get used. And so we kind of kept in there a minimum amount. It looks like in 2017, we spent $213, in 16, 106. But we've never gone over 400 since I've been here.
So can you bump that to 200 if you've never used over 213?
We can, yeah.
I'm just one, I don't know about the others.
No, I agree. A lot of times if we are advertising for somebody, it's because somebody's leaving and we save money on the wages for a short while anyway.
Miscellaneous covers a host of things. If, if this officer loses a family member and we send flowers, if there's some sort of event where there's an emergency in town, we have to bring everyone in and feed them, it would come out of that line. It's those
Yeah.
unexpected expenses that come up, emergency expenses. Utilities, heat, electricity, we were able to bring down electricity by
Huh.
600 and heat went up.
Plus, Peter, I have a question.
Did you have a question, Peter?
Yeah, heat is up 50% on the,
Yeah, so that, we actually I haven't brought to the board yet any contract for the firm. I'm trying to get a better rate. That's what it was looking like at the time we budgeted this. 2-year contract was $7.9.
because if we're at that, shouldn't it be up 1,100 over?
Well, you would think, but there's the delivery charge versus the supply, so this 7.9 applies to the supply.
So you're comfortable with that increase, is what you're telling me until you lot
Not
gets there?
terribly.
Not
but-
terribly, okay, all right.
But,
Kind of warmer.
but if you look
Okay.
if you look at a total bill and you separate out what the actual, the material difference is.
So you may be back, you may, either way, up or down with a, well,
I
this
think-
or down.
I think his budget could probably absorb,
A little bit.
change. It's not gonna be
Okay.
huge, but that building is unbelievably efficient. It's less money to heat that place than my house. What's the words me away?
It's probably because all the IT equipment in it.
I'm sorry. Could be. Could be.
Which licenses that they use all of them on there?
Licenses are going up, and the heating bill's going down.
Janitorial, we have the name of the cleaning services. Is this contract according to them, or is it according to the new one?
Yeah, I will change that note. That was my error. It is the same amount of money,
Okay,
Just a different company.
just different coverage.
got it.
And they seem like they're doing a good job so far. They're tearing it up over there.
I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything.
Maintenance is down pretty well. Everything's working. We don't need a new building.
That's why the maintenance is so low.
So all the heating system, the filters and all that, all cleaned up.
Yeah, the CAP's been pretty regimented about changing the air filters and you know, we had a couple of years where we had to make some improvements, but all's quiet there right now. So we felt pretty comfortable. We didn't want to do much more to it until we know where we're going after March if we weren't doing anything. So we're kind of in a holding pattern there. That's why we, you know, we're able to reduce improvements a little bit too. We didn't put anything in there. Just occasionally some improvements to the lighting and occasionally to the floor, tile replacements occasionally, but very minimal. Uniforms, the thing that drives that, you know, the most is the vests, and then obviously the officers get their stipend, but really it's the body armor. They're making it better, but it's also goes up a little bit each year.
You get reimbursed some of that?
We do, we can, but the vests right now are somewhere around $1,000 plus or minus.
The net it was about a little over $900 each.
The net to us is $900 each, so what does an actual vest cost you? So when we get a grant though, is it a match?
If they do,
If they do it, what,
if they do it, it's 50%.
so it's actually an $1,800 vest?
No, they could run 12 to 14, depending on the size
Okay.
and the type. Now they're putting plates in there for rifles, soft plates,
Mm-hmm.
so they're more expensive, but that's really what's driving most of this. You know, the uniforms, the guys are pretty reasonable about it. They get them as they need them rather than running down there to get everything all at once.
So in this budget, under the vest, do we have to put in the 50% match money in this 14,000 or no?
No, the way that works is we don't receive that money. It is our net cost is what we have to pay.
It was what we have the budget for. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and the captain keeps a very good schedule of, you know, what
Mhm.
That's what
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
He's really good.
Yep.
He grabbed me when Ryan was due. He said, hey, you're on, get it done.
And he does look for, I know he looks at, he's been looking for money for another uniform grant that might help. But, you know, you never know. Just maybe those things, you know, so I know he does look for things.
Yeah, one of the things while I'm there that we'll be doing is the officer's badge is say patrolman, and over the next year I want to have them say officer because it's what they should say, not patrolman. It's just, you know, they need to change. So
Is this like custodian and janitor?
so it would just be the silver patrol officer ones. So obviously the gold wouldn't change.
Right.
And
I always wondered why you had patrolmen on
it's something that we have.
there, way back in Kent.
And it needs to change, yeah. So, and then uniform maintenance is really dry cleaning and repair if they tear it, that sort of thing.
We're probably gonna exceed that line
this year. So,
Then if we're gonna exceed it, because that's contractual, you need to put it in. That's a contractual item.
Yeah, we'll have to look. Yeah, we can take a look at that, but it will be exceeded. The bill is roughly $300 to $400 a month.
So if you're looking at, so you did 55,
Right now,
you
no,
did 6,000 last year.
Yeah, we'll have one December bill,
6,000?
That's this year's.
Yeah,
You've already
you're
spent
above the line.
6,000, right?
No, 3398.
You keep dropping a line, Pat.
Wait a minute. Training,
They've spent 3,400.
Take your name tag, run it across.
They've spent 3,400 against a $3,500 line, but the monthly bills range
all
anyway.
right, 33, right?
Yeah, we'll probably be selling out 37,
Probably, yeah.
so maybe another 2.
So why so much? Is there a policy that, I mean, how can you, I mean, if the trunk throws up on you, you gotta get it cleaned, there's no
Yeah.
question about that, but
The dry cleaning is relatively consistent, I think.
It does vary, but it is rarely over 400. In fact, I think there's one in the manifest right now that's like 430. That's pretty rare. Most of the time it's in the mid threes.
Yeah.
so it kinda goes in
Sometimes low
spurts,
threes.
yep,
It just depends on who turns in what
Yeah.
to be dry cleaned.
Do they go to the same company? Have we ever approached other companies, get a better deal? Say a set price per uniform?
Yeah, several years ago, we looked at sanitary cleaners in Laconia, and I did look at another one that Laconia PD was using, and they were all comparable in price. And I talked to Lisa about it, and she felt like the customer service with the one we're using was excellent as far as pickup and deliveries. But it may be something we have to revisit again.
Is Quick Laundry superior? Is that the same?
Well, as many
We use
offices
those.
as we have, as many uniforms as we have to clean, it might behoove us to contact companies, even if they're in Concord,
Let them quote.
to see if they'll give us a quote per uniform, one price per uniform. Let's see if we can save some money.
Yeah. We've done it for a while, we certainly can.
It would be great. Every little bit helps.
And then training materials is, the majority of that is every year the supervisors will get updated with FBI leader classes, which is the supervisor version of training. And the all officers, by state mandate, have to have a minimum of at least one class per year that's outside of the routine training that they get at the police department. So they have to have something at least 8 hours, but usually those classes can be upwards of 40 hours. So training materials covers the tuitions and reimburse any of their costs to go to it. So right now, all the supervisors go through what we call the FBI leader program, which gives them a leadership class, supervision on the road, and some management training. There's other vendors that do it besides FBI leader, but they're more money. And so we've been using FBI leader, and when you complete the package, it kind of gives you a leadership award called the Trilogy Award. And the captain, administrative sergeant, and each one of the sergeants will eventually have that too. It's kind of like a supervisory goal. Roger Williams does a program similar to just send someone down to that as like 2,400. So they're all comparable. The academy doesn't offer that type of stuff because it's a hired vendor, and they don't have it. Then fuel, we kind of took a look at that together. We felt like we could bring that down a little bit. Vehicle maintenance was a little higher this year because Kevin's doing more to the vehicles to make them last longer and also keep the detail cars rolling for all the details we had this year. We had probably the most details I've ever seen since I've been here.
Chief, is there anything in the horizon for electric cruisers? Well, just know your maintenance goes to almost nothing. You charge, there's
So they,
And
what we're hearing is for the 2020 vehicles, Ford's pushing out the hybrid Explorers. They're about $4,000 more, but they're hybrid. But I'm hearing now that in 21 there'll be a full electric Explorer, which is interesting. Before I retire, to have an electric fleet. I mean, that's where it's heading. It's pretty wild.
exploders, huh?
Exploders.
No,
I mean,
no Tahoes?
they'll be like what are those cars that are all electric? Teslas.
Oh no, we'll get you the Chevy Bolt.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
they
that's
are.
where it's, within 3 years, I think you're gonna see that, which is wild.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm waiting for an electric pickup.
Yeah.
F-150.
Yeah.
They're gonna be first?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to cross over.
I know.
Has the Public Works Director looked at this vehicle maintenance line?
Yes.
Yeah, they went over it.
Concurred?
Yeah, they concurred and went over it together. He's fluid filling all the cars. They buy oil by synthetic barrels, and that goes up a little bit compared to the traditional oil we used to use. But I also, we're seeing some savings in fuel, I think, because they're, keeping the cars better running and more 6-cylinders in the fleet. So that's a good thing. If we have an electric fleet, that would definitely change. And then communications on that last page here, page 3. And so we reduced it by $500, but that covers obviously replacement of batteries for the portables if a portable gets broken on a call, and repair of the repeater antenna on Belknap Mountain. And then we have a fee to be up there, which covers our electricity, the backup generator, and just the ability to be up on the Belknap Mountain.
Yeah.
I thought that we have that program now for the portables, the replacement, if anything happened to them, that they get replaced.
Not the portable.
Not the Motorola radios, but one change is that OME recently quoted a lower price for Public Works to get a portable. So it may be that it's less than $1,500. The Belknap Tower is actually budgeted in a different line. That's in that equipment maintenance tech line. But the chief's correct. In fact, they just had a $1,000 expense related to repeater issues, and they often have radio repairs that are required.
What radio then did we spend all that money for?
The base station and dispatch.
That was a grant.
Yeah, that was with the grant.
No.
That was about
Are you thinking of what needs to be done?
No, we went into a contract.
So we had 2 contracts for replacement items.
One
One's
was
for the
Taser.
Taser, one's for the body cameras. We didn't have anything for radios or radio communications.
Right.
And in fact, if anything, more than likely the PD will be moving away from Motorola equipment. It sounds like.
We've been talking to the fire side, and they've been exploring other manufacturers that they feel do just as good a job as Motorola for less money.
Should we get into a contract that's sort of like the Taser and body camera thing, like a 5-year contract that will replace the parts and things like that?
You can see.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't heard
Nobody
of
has
it.
one like that?
No.
I mean, if we're spending money to replace the repair costs and things every year.
I'm surprised Motorola hasn't jumped into that.
Oh, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, PDs are shoveling out money like crazy if they break. Why would they go into a program? Motorola's smart not to do that.
I think the thing that might be worth mentioning here is that in all the discussions that have been going on about radio communications, the repeater on Belknap Mountain is aging quickly and is going to be obsolete, if not already, very soon, and very difficult to get parts for. And so
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's getting old, it's, you
And
know.
that's what
it's-
we just spent $1,000 on.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be a grant next year?
I think if it's included with our EOC project with the new PD, yes. If it's a standalone communication project on Belmont Mountain, not unless we were regional dispatching. If we were saying we're dispatching for more than one town, then the answer would definitely be yes, we'd be eligible. But if I applied for a grant that was just to replace equipment on Belmont Mountain for Tilton, they would say no. Because I sat on the grant committee and we had to deny some of those.
Is it just the tower itself that needs to be replaced, or the repeaters for Tilton?
Just the repeater
Yeah,
Tilton.
Tilton.
It's
How
like
much are we talking to if we had to replace that?
30.
Yeah, 24 to 30 is what they go
Mhm.
for. I mean, we got it with a grant. They're tanks, they can last many years, but what we're hearing is if it goes, there's no replacement parts for them anymore, because they're making a whole new type of repeater now.
Lighter,
They're
better?
Lighter, better, but a lot of departments out there, because they all got them at the same time, are still using them and they're working. But they're just saying, a word of caution is if they go, you'll have to fully replace them, there's no parts anymore. So, but
Right.
I'm gonna knock on wood.
Something to look into.
And then there's some parts, there's some small, $200 for intoximeter supplies in there. We still have one and we have the newest one. Weapon expense, it was, I think the last budget cycle, we made the improvements and increased and replaced our weapons with SIG, so we were able to reduce that down a little bit. And right now, all the weapons are in good shape, for the most part. There's just money in there if they go down, or if we have to replace any of the lighting systems on them, or we added the less lethal system. So that's a reduction in that line as well, because now that we have that, it should be good. We haven't, I'm knock on wood again, had to use that. And then, of course, the taser supplies. Those we need every year when we train the officers, the training cartridges and that sort of thing. And investigative expenses, we were able to reduce that down by $500. And that covers surveillance equipment, the crime scene supplies, blood draws, and court transcripts. And detectives have been really busy. Their felony cases are up. And so, they'll use what we have in there, but we wanted to make sure we didn't go over. So we were able to reduce that down a little bit. Drug investigation, they keep some emergency money in there, but we hardly ever use that because they're able to use a lot of the forfeiture for drug buys. So we reduced that down by 400. And like I said at the beginning, we just tried to make some cuts where we felt we could to try and keep this as close to level as possible. Pistol range, they're doing all the qualifications in Belmont right now. Even doing that, we felt like 700 would be plenty, and so we reduced that down by 300. But they've been going over there the last 3 weeks for qualifications, and we pay per officer by the hour for that. But it's a good, clean, safe place to do it, and they get it done quickly. And then equipment purchases, radar replacement cycle. We do have some older radars that if they go again, they're older parts. The cap said we'll have to fully replace them, and we wanted to make sure we had some money in that line for any radars that go down, because we have probably 3 or 4 that are obsolete and not able to get parts for anymore. And then a few dollars in there if any of the chairs break on the PD. But immunizations, $550, which is medicals, physicals, that sort of thing, psychological, if we need to have an officer take one of those. And then lastly was the legal expense. And with the upcoming contract, we wanted to make sure we had some money in there for that, basically. I think that's about it.
I have one suggestion. Under PD equipment purchases, I'm not one to spend money, however, sitting in those seats that we have to, in contract negotiations down in the kitchen, it would be really nice to replace them with something other than a folding chair downstairs. And I don't know how anybody, especially the size of the men and women that we have down in the PD, any length of time.
Chief, I bet if you took a drive down to White Farm,
Mhm.
you'd find some
Let's go.
suitable chairs.
We deliver.
That would be great.
I'll keep an eye out. We just had the auction in October, so we're a little thin, but, rinse and repeat, we get intake coming out all the time, but even though, if you're looking for something like this, Pat,
In like a,
nobody ever fills these, you can take a bunch of these down. They're blue.
I know, I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, oh, those chairs down in the,
Oh, the folding chairs,
oh,
we did budget on them. It's the same one still?
Yeah.
I want to keep those chairs for negotiations, we get out quicker. You get tired of sitting
I was
there.
gonna say, they weren't great for meetings, because nobody wants to be there very long.
Everybody falls asleep.
10 minutes and your legs go numb.
Half a dozen of these chairs,
Yeah.
I think it's right.
Yeah,
Easily.
absolutely.
You have my vote, because they're
Yeah.
awful.
Get rid of the mix and
And
match.
I would
You know,
take
get
half a
some
dozen
chairs like are
because-
in Jeannie's office. You know those chairs like in Jeannie's office?
Have Jason send you pictures.
Yeah, we'd gotten.
Just give me an idea on a number.
Yeah.
It's nice to try to find stuff that matches. I'm keeping an eye out for the break room heater.
We can use
Okay.
some of those
Yeah.
chairs.
All
Why-
right, thanks.
Why
There's
don't
plenty of
we
chairs here.
use some of the chairs we already have and then see what you need, because like Jeannie said, are there more chairs around the corner by the sewer commissioner's office?
Could be, no, there are chairs everywhere.
There are chairs
So-
everywhere.
So,
That's true.
okay,
Yeah,
Take the white ones.
thank you.
yeah, take the white ones.
Take the white ones.
They're easier to move, and they won't kill the floor over there. Some of these are very heavy to move.
Anything else
Yeah.
on the budget with the chief?
I have one question. How did you make the ammunition less lethal?
Make the, oh, those are the exact impact rounds, those, the rubber rounds. So if they can't get close enough to use a taser, they can use those. And they can be a lifesaver.
That was for the new, that gun that we purchased, that device?
Yes, yes.
That's yours.
Thank you.
So, next week will be the administrative budget and
Yeah.
and warrant articles. We're looking at
Goody goody.
And I sent over an email to, veterans are doing a ceremony at 11:05.
Is it 11:05 now? Oh, maybe we might be able to get there. We have contract negotiations at 10,
Yeah, 11:05.
so it depends on when we get out.
Oh, just let them, yeah.
Okay.
What?
Got your message.
The Veterans ceremony is at 11:05 on Monday, Veterans Day.
Do it during the, break one, do that under the selectmen's. Okay, so the next thing we have on the agenda was
I'd like to.
Bill Lawrence
Should be,
is here from Brian Lawrence Hardware. Talk about downtown parking, and the chief's here, maybe you can, come on down.
Yeah.
See if you can
We have a parking ordinance which is not enforced. The other thing is that,
I'll make sure we.
Talking to the mic, Billy.
that everybody parks on the street that works there, that lives there. My business is very incumbent on turnover.
Mhm.
I'm not getting that. I'm losing customers left and right because, as you read that article, I mean, there's 3 stores this way, 3 stores that way, that if they can't find a spot in front, they're gonna go to those stores, and they're doing it. I mean, I have a lot of great customers that will go out of their way to find a place to park. And there are times on the street where you can see there's plenty of parking spaces. But in the crucial times, there aren't. Right now, there's no parking spaces on Main Street. Around 4 o'clock, when Tilton House and Casa Amigos open, there will be no spaces. And I'm sure they're enjoying the restaurants because they're both great restaurants. So, I mean, what I would like, which would be the most simple fix for me, is to put one sign in the one spot that I have for 30-minute strictly enforced parking. I don't know how to enforce it because, I mean, last time I called the police last week because it's 3 days in a row, there were cars parked for 6 hours in that space. It took 2 hours for the police to get there, and I don't even know if they ever got there. The car was finally left. But so, you know, the customer count continues to climb. You know, not only was the online convenience, but I am so inconvenient to get to. And if I don't have something that shows that people can come in and out in a short span, because people don't stay in my store for more than 5 or 10 minutes unless they're there talking. They're not shopping. But so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some way to create at least one open space in front of my store. I mean, I tell people to use my driveway if they're there because that's an open spot. But I think we should have a modular parking for other parts of town too. You know, I think if somebody else came up and said, you know, I would like to have a space here to be 30-minute instead of 2-hour. I don't know where the 2-hour came from. It's been there forever, but it's really not been enforced, except a few years ago it was being enforced. But
We created 30-minute spaces on Tryon, the one that goes into Center Street.
yeah, isn't the
Between
town
church.
hall? Isn't the town hall like
30 minutes.
30
The
minutes?
one
That's been
out,
30 minutes
the one
forever.
out front,
Yeah.
not the side ones.
The
Right.
side one is between the hours of such and such and such.
Right.
So I'd love to have that designated. I mean, just, you know, Jim and I both have customers that are shorter span, yeah.
Okay.
I go downtown all the time, and I see the problem every single day. I see that problem, and I try to watch it, particularly when the agenda came out. I spent the last 2 mornings to go downtown, and I went downtown 3 times during the morning span, just this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. And I'm sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. And I spent maybe a half hour each time watching the cars come in, come out until they took the benches away. And all of this side of the road on the Polly's side, now Polly's is closed Mondays and Tuesdays, so it didn't affect anyone that worked at Polly's, but all of this side was entirely filled with people, employees of stores on this side. On that side, they filled it with employees that worked on this side. So it's a huge problem. I saw it every single day. Even though you speak with the person, you get, well, there's no enforcement. They're not here, or they just left, so we've got at least 2 hours before they come back. It's winter time. They only enforce in the summer. These are the answers that we're getting from the business owners. So they know when you're around and when the foot patrols are around. They don't do the foot patrols in the winter or the fall because it's cold. And I know that to be different because I've seen the foot patrols. But Billy's absolutely right. You know, I've many times tried to get in to get something very simple, and I've had to come up to municipal parking and walk around to get into Billy's. And something has to be done. 30-minute parking, you can put 30-minute parking up, which I'm willing to do to see if it works.
Sure.
However, it's not, you can't enforce it. You know,
I could
it's the enforcement, you know, it's the enforcement part of it.
Right.
And you call the police and they say, well, okay, you know, I can call the police and say, I know that there are 7 owners of stores right now parked in 7 spaces on Main Street right now, and I can tell you the police are not gonna come down. Me, calling. I can tell you that, and shame, it's terrible.
So
It's
how do we fix
awful.
this, Chief?
We gotta fix it.
So, I know I saw it on the agenda too, I took a look. So, since the beginning of the year, they've logged, they've logged 103 downtown walking patrols and 29 patrols since October 1st. The sergeant, administrative sergeant, and Detective Sergeant Buffington, probably back in September, really ramped it up, and everyone said they noticed the difference. So I see them in the log, they're calling off down there. What I can do is have them stop in and see you. I think the 30-minute signs are enforceable, and if you see them down there, grab them and say, that car's been here longer than 30 minutes. If not,
You don't see them though. I mean, the only time I see officers are when I'm closing up.
yeah, I mean, they're
That's when they do their patrols.
Yeah, they're definitely walking down there, we've seen, I've been checking the log, we've seen an increase in September. They were going down daily in the month of September, like I said, 29 times since October 1st. But there's a huge increase in the type of activity they're seeing with drivers, with distracted driving and erratic off calls, because people are texting and driving and cutting each other off and chasing each other in the parking lot. So the violations we're doing, citations are up. In 2017, we did 2,600 citations, 2018, 3,000 citations, 2019, right now, as of today, we're at 2,178 citations. That's a lot for a town of our size.
Are they just downtown?
That's all the moving violations.
Oh, moving
So
violations.
parking,
Yeah, the thing about downtown is that
they've issued
That's one
28
question.
tickets downtown, last year 65, and 2017 66 downtown. So it's 159 parking tickets downtown in 3 years. We did have, several years ago, we had a part-time parking person, and I do hear feedback that they would like to see that a couple of days a week again. You know, it's something to maybe talk about in the spring. I could probably absorb it in part-time wages. But they really have been trying to be downtown more. I can have them come in and check with you. I am in favor of the 30-minute sign as well.
Yeah, no, I see a lot of guys that come in and visit, it's great. I mean, I don't think anybody else downtown has an issue with the parking.
No, because they use everybody else's
Well,
parking.
no, because downtown is a service industry now.
Mhm.
You're gonna go get your hair done, you're gonna park somewhere, because you got an appointment. You wanna go eat, you're gonna park somewhere, because you're gonna wait to get in there anyways, and you're gonna spend 2 hours eating. So there's none of the restaurants have an issue with that. They're packed. I mean, Tilton House,
Right.
they're doing great. I mean, the tattoo guys, they park their bike in front of the store. I mean, I think the people that were parked in front of my store were working at the tattoo shop, because the New Jersey plate said ink on it. So,
So Chief,
I mean, I'm like the only one that has an issue with it. Maybe Jim next door, I don't know, he doesn't seem to ever have a problem with parking. I just know it's really affecting my business,
The
because
number
I'm
of
a different
visits.
kind of business.
the officers made this year downtown is almost pathetic. I mean, between October and now, that's not even once a day.
Yeah, I mean, that's called off walking.
Okay, but that's not even once a day. We have a merchant that's telling us he's losing business because we're not enforcing our parking ordinance. And you can't enforce a parking ordinance by taking a walk downtown once every other day or so.
No, and I would love to be part of that. I don't know how I can do that. I mean, I can call you every time, but I know if somebody's at the other end of the town, you're not gonna get there in a reasonable time, or.
No. Yeah, they're going down there, I'll just have them check in with you, so we kind of get some about it.
Well, I mean, I'll just call every time, I mean, if I have a sign there, I will call every time someone's there for over half an hour. I mean, it's easy for me to do that.
So how do you go about issuing a ticket? How do you determine somebody's been there 2 hours? How is the process?
Historically, the only way to do it is chalk, but there's several circuit courts around the country that have found it's a violation of Fourth Amendment, the Sixth Circuit, I think it is. has stopped chalking them.
That's only on the side of the tire. If you chalk the tread, I don't think that's can be.
Out of the way it was written, it just said,
Yeah, I read that.
Ohio was one of the states. It hasn't got to the First Circuit yet.
So how do we do it now?
So right now, that's what we would have to do, is to actually chalk them. The 30-minute is a little bit easier, a lot easier actually, because if I'm walking downtown and I walk by next door and I see a white pickup truck there, and I go down to town hall and I walk back and it's still there and I'm over a half hour, that's easy. They have to either see it or chalk it, watch it or chalk it,
So-
basically.
I mean, we're spending all kinds of money on cameras and stuff. Why couldn't we, if we have somebody at dispatch, we put a camera that shows downtown, and somebody at dispatch can just, keep an eye out and say, hey, you know what? I just noticed that car parked in front of there, the white Chevy, has been there for 2.5 hours. And the officer could just go down there and give it the ticket, as opposed to having to go down there twice and split shifts. Would that be something?
I think
Would you
a
be
camera
able-
would be perfect. I mean,
Do
that's,
you have Wi-Fi at your,
uh,
I mean, or do you have internet?
I have internet, yeah.
So possibly, you could-
I have a camera, it don't work very well.
possibly
Keeps flipping in and
with
out.
some of the people downtown could partner with the police department and allow them to use their internet signal, connect it to the internet, so it could be to the dispatch, and dispatch could help out a little bit.
The problem is getting, the issue is when you call the police and you say, listen, we've got an issue. Parking is not the priority. I mean, if they've got a vehicle, if they got an arrest, or if they got a domestic dispute or whatever, they're out there, and you know how many people we have on per schedule. We don't have them say that out loud in public, but you know what that is, and that's so parking issue is not a priority, and that's what's happening, and you don't have that as a priority.
You make it easier for the police officer to issue the ticket. So
Mhm.
presently, somebody would call, an officer would have to go down, mark and identify the vehicle, and then come back again in 2 hours. To do it, because he has to prove that he
Or
saw
half
it
an
actually
hour.
sitting
In
there.
my case.
In your case, half an hour.
But I do need a sign because I don't have one in my folder.
So if you eliminated a police officer having to be dispatched down there, and just had, might be,
I think the one in front of Billy's and the one in front of the church should be 30 minutes. There's no reason why it shouldn't be anything less than,
Which
anything
church?
more. The church next to Billy's, with the tower, with the AT&T thing on there. I don't think that it should be, there's
All summer.
no business
Tanning girl and the big guy parked.
parked there.
Parked there.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah,
it.
Right.
So, and I think those two spaces should be 30 minutes, because you have, Billy's is right there, and then there's a space where your driveway is, and then there's that, and the school, the church is not open for business. I think that you should make those two spaces, and then enforce it.
If the area gets close to 30 minutes, I can have them check in with him daily down there. And 30 minutes is a lot easier to enforce.
I mean, I could just call. If that's
Because they're
easier.
down there for that amount of time.
Yeah, but, it's 30 minute, that's 20 times.
And you can
Possible.
call.
Yeah. I mean, you're not gonna be down there 20 times a day, right?
I think Jason,
Tell you what,
he's thinking.
now that I work in Concord and I see the rollout there, that's a whole other thing, because they've got the kiosks and the slips and, and that's expensive, and I know there's an enforcement thing. But I'll tell you what, we have all these committees and this vision casting about, we want to make Tilton a great place to shop, and we want to make Tilton a great place to visit. We want to make Tilton a great place to live. Well, if we open our tax bills, that's not going to be possible, but, we want to be like Portsmouth. Portsmouth, why are we talking 30? But Portsmouth, they've got like 10-minute and 15-minute spots in front of the newspaper shop, or the coffee, or the quick in and out. Why not 50? Is 15? Maybe when they gotta get paint next, that's a bird. But I'll tell you what,
I mean,
there's some places that have 15-minute hot spots that boom, that's an easy walk down and back. You don't have to wait an hour or 2 hours or, you know.
I can't go into Billy's and have a conversation with him and find what I want for my old 150-year-old house in 15 minutes.
That's why you park in his
But I'll
driveway.
tell you, a 15-minute with a little bit of grace and
Yeah,
latitude.
half hour, I think is fine.
You know, a 30, then it's like, well, you know, it was like a 35, a 40-minute, you know.
Yeah.
You put a 15 hammer down, and if it's 20, 25 minutes, you get a little grace period, but be decisive, you know. I mean,
Well, really,
that's what some of the other cities are doing.
And we had that big meeting at Tilton School. I mean, to me, if downtown isn't accessible, nobody's gonna shop here. I mean, they are now because there's restaurants. And that's really the only thing that's, I think,
Anchoring them.
using all the parking spaces.
So we all
no,
agree on
no
the 30.
space for anybody more.
I agree on the 30, but years ago, I think we're all aware of it, the selectmen designated parking in front of the inn, dedicated solely to the inn. That's another alternative.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna dedicate one space to me, I would ask that you dedicate one to each business in town, that they could do whatever they want with that, because I don't feel that's fair. I mean, I feel it's fair 30 minutes, because that helps my whole side of the street. You know, I don't know if the tattoo shops down there, if they would want their 2 hour into 30 minute, it may not be,
Whatever we do comes down to
yeah,
enforcement.
right.
And we have enough officers at this point that we should be able to enforce our parking ordinance. And if we're not going to enforce it, we need to get rid of it, because it is a joke. We've been hearing about parking issues
For years.
for years, and it's not resolved. An officer's going down there every other day or so is not the solution. But I do agree, if
Well, in the
a
60s, there was an
30-minute
issue with
parking
parking.
space
That's
will
because there were so
work,
many businesses there.
then I agree, but it needs to be enforced by the police department, not by the merchant.
I mean, we should have some kind of, connection. I mean, that's the thing that we need to have communication, whatever's easiest. I mean, I think also using electronics, that's a great idea, because you can really, you have a record, you have the hours, and if you've got a good enough camera, you can actually see the plates and whatever the car is. My camera's a piece of junk, but-
We're very pro-business. We have a business that's been here almost 100 years. And we don't want to see this business lose and go away because we can't enforce parking. It's just that simple.
Actually, the hardware store's been there 160 years.
I was gonna say, it's been there
160?
over
My
100
family's only
years.
been there almost 100, but it
Yeah.
was built in 1859 or around there. It's on the Exaverton Bridge, Belknap County map.
All the more reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of the early pictures of Philbrook and Hill in the 1870s at the store. And it's horse and buggy out front. Looks exactly like it does now. My
Shame
dad
on us.
actually had the porch put back on because it had fallen off, but he wanted it to be, look original. Yeah.
Shame on us for not preserving a part of history downtown because we can't enforce parking, our own ordinances.
So let's go with the 30 for, are we looking at 2 spaces?
2.
In front of the church, in front of,
Got a motion?
I make a motion that we post 2 spaces, one in front of Lawrence Hardware and one in front of the Methodist Trinity Church. 30-minute parking only. All others, 30-minute max parking. Leave it at that.
And if you put like strictly enforced on it, it might, the really conscientious people will say, oops, I'm gonna be at Polly's for an hour, I better find another space.
I'll second the motion.
okay, we have motion in a second. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I think that's probably not
Any other discussion?
I think that we should have the language.
Yeah, right.
I think that the language should be, the chief is discussing with Billy that perhaps maybe we can stencil on the pavement strictly enforced or whatever, 30-minute parking on the, with the sign.
With a sign.
Well, I'm saying on the ground, isn't that going to be the snow?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
right.
better in the summer.
There's only one pole.
So,
on
we
the-
ready?
The other pole's down, I think.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous?
They will put a pole in front of the church so that
Okay.
it's close, to answer your question. I don't think John heard it. Yeah, they'll put a pole in there.
Post,
The other thing,
delineator post.
we're talking about that, we used to have a big white sign that said municipal parking, but it was on the telephone pole, and they had a wrought iron bracket, remember that?
Mhm.
And then, I don't know if it fell down, it was gonna fall down, but it'd be really nice to have something that says municipal parking and a light on it, pointing, out back, so that we can get some of the people to realize that, hey, that's not apartment parking, that's municipal parking out there, because
Hmm.
a lot of people may not realize, and, they can go out there for dinner and say, oh, I'll park in the municipal lot.
Should we add one down at Tryon Lane?
That's where it used to
And then
be.
down at Center Street, where it ends up on
I
Cross?
can't remember, I thought it was white hanging off a building.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying
I
to
had
think.
I had Jacob do a little research on that. I thought I had shown that to you, and he had found the white sign, and it was one of the things, I thought I had talked to you all about that, getting those signs put back up, the municipal parking.
I think,
Yeah, they were gonna redo it,
I think
too,
three of
because
them.
it was kind of falling apart.
So- so let's, I think if we also do that,
Okay, I'll look into
and
that.
and clearly marking the spots out back, that they're for municipal parking only.
And what was the conversation on Tryon Lane?
Have one down there and one down where Center Street comes on to Route 3.
For municipal parking? Yeah, great idea.
The spaces should say public parking, right?
Municipal.
Now, is there a time period that there's?
Yeah.
Municipal sounds
Yeah,
like
public.
Is it 9 to 5 or something?
Right, 'cause they might think
Then,
municipal
For the
spaces are-
30-minute,
30
it's till 6 o'clock, I believe. Oh, no, our ordinance, I think, is 4. It's still
This one out
4
here?
out downtown Main Street.
Is it like 8 to 4 or something? 8 to 5,
I'll have to look it up on the ordinance. It's either 4 or 6, because I remember getting a ticket at 4:02 on one of them. Out front, remember down
Tryon Center, and where was the other one?
by Elm Grove? Elm Grove.
Tryon, Center Street, and School Street.
Oh,
Oh, that parking's only in effect from, what time?
Those were all the accesses to that parking lot.
I'm not sure. I
Well,
haven't seen
we
a sign for so
probably
long,
should
so
put one
I was
up
waiting
here.
down at the
The
end.
2-hour parking
At the
is in
entrance to
effect
Parking
on Main
Street.
Street until,
People know, oh, there it is, instead
I
of assuming
believe
they'll
it's
take the
still-
left.
6?
we
Four,
did a lot of
six.
city
Yeah, I
hall.
don't remember.
and then there's no parking
They're all kind
then.
of rusted.
Then it
After
goes to 4-hour, and then after
Then you
midnight,
force-
it's no parking at all.
So from 6, then somebody will come in and park at 4, and they know they're good for the rest of the
Yeah,
night.
yeah, I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean, and that's okay. I mean, that's when the dinner hour starts, and I don't, so if it was good up to 4, that's fine to me. I mean, if you could put it up to 6, and then,
Whatever,
At
at
least-
least 6 is.
yeah, I mean, it's really
What time do you close?
6, yeah. So, I mean, that's all right. I mean, I understand the people if it's 2 hour, but
Well,
if it's half hour and it goes to 6, then it's.
well, even the 30-minute would help the restaurants, because they do a lot of takeout there.
Yeah,
So that would benefit them to have somebody who's running in and out,
yeah.
for
Yeah,
their
especially at
pickup.
the church.
Well,
At
yeah,
the church.
if you can get
So
the
they can-
merchants not to
Yeah,
park
that's
on
the
Main
main
Street, that's a huge thing, you know. I know even a lot of the hair salons, they park there while their customers are coming. When I was here on Monday once, when Casamigos wasn't open, Polly wasn't open, I came in late because my wife's car broke down. It was, at 12 o'clock, there was not a parking space on the street. And I was really perplexed, because I didn't know
Everything's
anyone,
closed.
nobody was open. I wasn't open, you know. And I don't, where was everybody? Must have been people that lived there on a Monday. Crazy.
So,
Thank
let's
you.
know how it's going, and
Yeah, I mean, since that article in the Sun, like in September, it was really good. I mean, a lot of people, because I was saying, you know, if this continues, I might as well get a job somewhere else because, you know, I could make more money working for somebody else than trying to struggle and not get anything here. Although I want to stay here as long as I can.
Please don't force me back into the box stores.
Yeah, I mean, you maybe see me there, you know, working there, but, yeah, I appreciate this, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we'll get, is Luke healed up?
somebody had, no,
Karen, Selectmen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it. We'll-
Thanks, Chief.
Anything I can do.
Good job on the budget.
Yeah.
Selectmen's report, and Peter, you want to do the veterans thing too?
At the Veterans Home. Sure. At the Veterans Home. Let's see, Monday, November 11th, at the Veterans Home at 11:05. They will be doing their Veterans Day event. Anyone that wants to is welcome to attend. The last week or so, it appears that this board is looking to go in a different direction regarding parks. So I would request that we invite the parks to come in and have a discussion as to what their duties are or aren't, because there seem to be some big changes coming.
Joe's not here. I'm next.
Can I respond to that?
Go for
He's
it.
asking for the parks to, whether we want the parks to come in and talk about the direction in which the Parks
Sure.
Commission
Yeah, sure.
wants to come in on. Is it time to respond to that or whatever?
Well, you know, I said we do selections reports, and if anybody wants
Are
to
you
be put
asking
on
a
the
question?
budget,
But are
I
you,
mean, I'll put on the agenda, you know, we could set that up.
Let Pat ask what she wants.
I didn't want to get into a big conversation, but we can certainly schedule one, then you can go ahead.
Okay.
Comment.
I'm just last week there was a lot of heated discussion, and there was a lot of misconception going on between conversations. There's a lot of different entities in a lot of different interests, variable interests in committees, and several committees involved in a project going on that's coming to fruition in March. And we have 5 selectmen that sat here last week, and we couldn't get a word in edgewise because everybody was talking over everybody else. So I think that there's a real big misconception here that the Board of Selectmen really wants the parks to go in a different direction. And I think that they're actually responding to something that maybe I said, and I don't want them to think anybody on the Parks Commission, because frankly, if I didn't re-up for a selectman again, I would be the first one to sign up for a Parks Commission, because I think they do a phenomenal job. However, having said that, what we got hung up on was, did we drop the ball on that whole thing with the purview to the Police Building Study Committee, and in that, the underlayment was the Parks Commission and so on and so forth. So I thought I was responding to something, and then somebody else spoke about something else. So is it good for them to come in and get it all ironed out? Yeah, I'm in favor of that. But I did want to say that so that people didn't think that I'm against the Parks Commission. Now, there's also something that's going on that had something to do with the RSA, that we voted for the autonomy of the Parks Commission. I think it's RSA 35B. And it clearly states that they are to work with specific municipal governing bodies. So it's very clear and precise in that RSA, and I looked it up, and that what we have to resolve as a Board of Selectmen is somewhere along the line, somebody made a decision that we, the Board of Selectmen, can no longer call Kevin and just say, hey, Kev, can you do this? It has to have a work order, and we have to call Town Hall now in order to get a work order. And Parks Commission can no longer call Kevin to get a work order. I don't believe that that is true. According to the RSA that we adopted and we voted on back in 2009 or 10, in that area, that RSA clearly states that we have given them that autonomy to work closely with other governmental agencies within our town. That being said, is also highway. So we have to work out how that can work and resolve that issue between them. So it would be a good thing to bring in and say, how is that going to work? The Parks Commission has named Catherine as that liaison over the years, so she's been the one that the Parks Commission has picked, although someone in the town has deemed that she's not allowed to do that. So that's what we have to fix. That's what we have to fix. I'm sorry if I went on, but we have to fix that. It's not the board against the parks.
So we need to discuss, have a meeting and discuss that whole process is what
Right,
really
exactly.
happened. Because,
Right.
So,
and I don't want to keep it on Selectmen's reports, because we don't want to brush over this. We want to do it,
We want to fix it.
fix it, and not,
Right.
I don't believe there's any intent of this board, at least I haven't heard one, to take away the authority given to the park commissioner.
That's correct.
And I
Well,
believe
I
that's
don't
their
have any.
concern. So if that is not going to take place, at least at this time, then I would send the message to the park commissioners that that is the fact. And at this time, unless they wish to, they don't need to come in, because the Board of Selectmen does not plan to remove those authorities. That it is more a communication conduit. And then, once we have determined how that would take place, then we can communicate that with the Parks Commissioners. But I think their fears should be assuaged by a communication that says, as I said, that we're not intending.
Well,
I've never heard anybody say they want to take any of that away. I think that people are jumping to conclusions on stuff, and what it gets back to is a year ago, Kevin wanting to organize in the workflow and all that, and we invested, we all sat here as it was presented, a whole package where all of our workflow, our hours, would help them scheduling and make sure everything gets done, and we'll know where everything's at. It was an organizational thing. And we purchased pretty pricey piece of software that would track all of the work that's done at the Public Works Department. In order to do that, people would just do a work order, it would be in the record, and it would be in a queue. It would never come off that queue until it was either done or whatever. It sets priorities and it does that. It allows for Kevin to not have to field calls or anything like that. You know, it would all get done, and sometimes you could say, yeah, do the same work that was done last year at this date, and he can schedule it. Somehow it got into you're not allowed to talk to Kevin. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to use our process of work orders so that everything's organized and tracked. And we all, as selectmen, I think, does anybody not remember purchasing the software for Kevin?
I remember purchasing the software for Kevin. I do remember that, but I don't ever remember subrogating my authority as a selectman to say, I can't check in and say, hey, what's the status of Cedar Street and paving? And then I'm not allowed to talk to the highway department to say, hey, what's the status? I don't need a work order to call the highway department and say, hey, what's the status? And I don't believe that this, Catherine just said, I don't think we need the parks to come in and talk. I do think we need parks to come in and talk, because the problem, the issue is not just Pat Constantino and her words last week, but also the issue is Catherine calling Kevin and asking her to do highway to do things and put in her own work orders per the Parks Commission's sanctions. And so Park Commission says, hey, Catherine, can you get this done? Yes, I'm the liaison. Okay, let me do it. And yet they have a problem with Catherine's. That has to be resolved.
I lost you.
So,
The issue is with Catherine calling and saying there's an issue at Riverfront Park, it needs to be fixed. That's the issue. It's not just, so that we need to have, we have to have Parks Commission in to fix it.
Yeah, I think this could be, I think we're touching on something, and I think we can resolve all this.
Mhm.
So can we look at it on the agenda and
Yep.
people look at the stuff and put that on the agenda so we can sort it out? Because it's a very easy fix. I think it's communication, we're all confused what our
Yep.
individual intentions really are, or not
Right.
what people are perceiving them to be.
Easy resolve.
I agree.
And we're good,
I agree with you.
we're all
I
butting
agree with
heads
you.
here.
Let the record show, I agree with John Scanlon.
Have another cookie.
Pass the blueberry pie around.
Have a cookie. Okay, so, yeah, I'm next. I didn't have anything, well, I can say we all survived that storm, the windstorm and everything. And,
Which one?
you know what? Hate to say it, the tree was still standing, not a branch fell off of it. That strong maple tree that we're cutting down because it's dead. That's all I'd say.
the tree we're cutting down because it's dead. Think about what you just said.
Yeah, that quote, it's dead. It's not dead, it's very much alive, and it's a strong tree.
There you go.
And I offered to have it pruned. Oh, so, Pat, you're...
Okay, I have a couple of things. The first thing is we have a community service person that I would absolutely positively love to snag for the senior center. He does have connections with people up at the senior center. He's working 48 hours. I'd like you to sign off. Myself and Emily will be the supervisor. We have painting, we have work, miscellaneous work in the building itself, putting up the plastic, which we would need Kevin to get us a high enough ladder there's plastic that's been up there for about 5 years on the inside windows, which are very high. Public Works did it, but we're gonna have him redo it. He's a carpenter by nature, so we're gonna take advantage of that 48 hours. And I don't want anybody else to steal them. So this is gonna go around for a signature. The other thing is, in your invoices, do you remember a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we had a health inspection done at the senior center, and one of the things that failed was the plumbing, was that we needed an air gap for the 3-bay sink. And I called the plumber, and we got that done immediately. Somebody made a decision to take that out of town hall building and maintenance line item. I feel it should come out as senior center donations. If you feel differently, tell me. If it's our running of the kitchen wouldn't exist. The food preparation, the senior food service, if it were a town building all by itself and not being used, it wouldn't exist under those circumstances. So it's a $400 bill. It's up to you folks. It's ALLC Mechanicals, something like that, there.
Good with that, Peter?
That was the agreement.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Pat, for bringing that up.
All right. And then, so if you let Jeannie, it's the consensus of the board, if you let them know that it should be transferred out of that line item and taken out of the senior center donations rather than taken out of building maintenance. In the FYI, other than the fact that I'm going to steal Jeannie's thunder that Northfield's paying for half the tree, is a license to apply for a license for vape, for a vaping license downtown. Did you see that? Can I see that?
It's a dear son, Madam Raven Bates, LLC.
Oh, yeah.
Made an application provision of enforcement for retail tobacco.
With all of the publicity that vaping and the detriment to our children that's going on and so on and so forth, should we look into the harm and in the legalities of renewing licenses like this? I mean, I know Peter's shaking his head, and I don't want to harm a business, but didn't we just do this recently, a couple years ago, to a business that was selling something that began with a spice?
That synthetic stuff?
Right,
We outlawed it.
It was
Didn't we outlaw the
$4,500 a
sales of
week.
it in Tilton.
right.
So we didn't single out one business. We
Right.
just made it.
Well, I don't want to single out one business, but that happened across our table tonight. I'm just thinking, in the future, should we think about businesses, vaping businesses that are coming now into Tilton? There's a lot more and more that are coming into Tilton. Should we consider looking into and researching what the damages are of that? Go ahead, Peter.
I believe there are many more deaths from under the 21 crowd from texting and driving, so do we put in an ordinance that you have to be 21 to drive in Tilton? You know, the nanny state can only go so far.
That's true.
So I'm looking
Jeannie's
at
got
this,
something.
just to clarify, he's made an application for enforcement, Division of Enforcement for a retail tobacco license under the provisions.
Yeah.
That's so.
That's part of that, the whole thing. I don't care one way or another. I want to make that known. I don't care one another because I don't smoke and I don't vape. I don't really care. I'm just looking out for, this has come up I don't know how many times in the news, so I don't.
And I was just gonna say that I put a couple articles in your folder tonight about vaping, because it is, you'll see what they're doing in Massachusetts, you'll see what they're doing in Durham, here in New Hampshire. It's becoming an issue.
Are they putting in legislation and things like that? They are.
In Massachusetts, the governor outlawed it. Isn't that what it says?
Right, but they've also, I think, are running some issues with that. The judge is letting it go for the
Sure.
time being.
And then in Durham, they're restricting it, but then they talk about, challenges with enforcement. I just bring it to your attention because it is in the state, and I thought you would all want to be aware of what's happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna see that coming up, and I've had this conversation with Catherine about legalization of marijuana. And if that happens, I can tell you that there are communities that are preparing to create legislation to have to opt in or opt out so that you can have sales of marijuana in your downtown, in your community. Sort of like the lottery,
Keno?
the keynote. So it's coming.
Okay. All right, 2 more things and then I'll be done. Quick announcement in case people are watching this, because I've gotten numerous calls and I did get an update from Kevin on 1112 R&D will be paving Cedar Street, Linden, Highland, all that area. 1112 they will be paving.
Are they fine grading? And
I don't know the
compacting Monday?
details. I just know that they will be there. 1112.
I just hope they fine grade the day before, otherwise.
They better be.
Well, maybe that's when the paving project begins.
Begins, right. Date begins,
Might
right.
not be when bituminous hits the ground, but
This time of year, they work nonstop. Monday won't be a holiday generally. Because this plant's gonna be shutting down for Thanksgiving.
Feels bad.
I just lost my, where I was going with that, because I had the paving. I had one other thing and I just didn't. Go ahead.
Hit it.
I have one thing. It was suggested to me, it's not my idea, but I was asked about us applying for a sign, oh my gosh, what do they call them? They call them,
Sounds
the
like.
blue signs on the highway. Tourist.
They're,
Attraction type
attraction
signs.
sign, right.
Yep. Huh, oh well. So I looked up what the requirement is for municipal signage. And I didn't know if that was something you thought we should pursue, if you wanted the selectmen to pursue it if you do, or,
For what?
What
To
do you-
have Uptown and Tilton up
What
there?
do you,
oh, I'm sorry, it was suggested historical downtown Tilton. The sign
on the
that
blue
says-
sign on the ramp? You just put a new sticker for that next to whatever else is
To
up
get the
there?
people to come downtown.
Is that part of the criteria? Because I don't believe that we, I think we checked into that when we asked them, when we went down, Catherine, and fought for the sign to be put up. We asked if municipalities could participate in that. And they said no municipalities could participate in that because it was the,
Well, it's right here.
okay,
602.17, municipal signage must be applied for and maintained by the municipality. Business districts, business loops, downtowns shall. And then it just says consist of multiple varied commercial businesses. Individual shopping malls, centers, plaza complexes, or commercial developments under common name regardless of how owned and maintained shall not constitute as a business district, so this would definitely be a business. Not subject to minimum hours of operation, shall be limited to locations with the applicant municipality, blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole criteria.
Yeah,
I did just to find out, this also tells you what you have to supply to them for information. It's quite a list.
yeah.
But I also inquired from DOT if there was actually an application form. I haven't gotten a response, but I didn't know if you wanted to pursue it, if you wanted the Board of Selectmen to pursue it, maybe your Main Street group.
I'd absolutely like to pursue it. I know that there is an application form because Tanger in the Tilton School went through that application process. I don't know if Tilton School's name is up there, but I knew Tanger was the spearhead of why we went down, you and I went down to Concord on that, and they changed the actual legislation on it. They rewrote the criteria.
But then the question is, if you do want to pursue it, where would you want the sign? At exit 20 or 19?
Well, wouldn't it just be added on to the
big blue ones that are
big
already
blue one that
there.
are already there?
You
They
just
don't
put
add another one
Yeah.
on. They just add
Yeah,
the
there
name to the big blue one.
attractions or
Right, but
whatever.
is there one? for
Exit
each
20.
exit?
I think Tilton School's on both sides.
Okay. Go for both?
Yeah,
And how do you want to do it? Do you want?
And you'd have 3 signs, because 20 has 2 sets, and then 19 has 1.
one. I think they're like $500 a piece.
There's a,
Expensive.
there's an installation, upfront installation cost, and then there's a yearly maintenance fee. I ran across it in this, and I went,
What do they do, wash the sign?
manufacturing and installation fee of $400.
Huh?
That's what it says.
$400 per year?
No,
Per-
That's a one, I think that's a
Oh,
one time,
okay.
and like I said, I think
But
that's a one time.
that's per sign.
Probably, and then I think there's a, I think you pay them a fee yearly just for having it.
advertising.
So, you want to do it?
Yeah.
You want Board of Selectmen to do it? Do you want Main Street Group to do it? Juliet Harvey's group? You want us to keep?
Let's see if Juliet wants to do it.
What do you think? Gene?
No, I think let the Main Street group do it.
That's fine. Get her done.
All right. I will send it to her and let her know the board is in support. I'm good, thank you.
That's it.
Did you remember what you
What?
had? Right, so, you have my weekly update, the health trust renewal rates. I submitted that to you all last week under information. Wanted to see if you're ready to sign off on that contract tonight. I have the original right here. I would like to start looking at dates for open enrollment because that's right around the corner and we like to try to give the employees as much time as possible.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. It's not gonna change any.
yeah, and I will tell you that didn't go up as much as last year. I know. But they do provide a fantastic service to the community.
Do you need a motion for that, or we just need a consensus to sign it? Okay.
You reviewed this, right?
I did. Many times. So while you're does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, well, while you're looking at that, the True Green accident site, excuse me, Bill Cass will send somebody out to review the concerns noted at last week's meeting. I also asked him to let us know when, so that we could have a town official be present. DPW will regrade the soil prior to the installation of the new railing. And Superior Fence said that they could start the installation in December. And I wanted to show you these pictures just so everybody's good with what we're doing. So the first picture is what they're proposing to put up.
Makes sense.
This is what we have in Best Pocket Park, so you'll see there's a slight difference.
Mhm.
I asked them if they could match that, and they said, no, this has gone out of stock. This is what they could do. This is what's there now, and that's the railing across the bridge. So,
Oh. Yeah, that's very similar. So put them in order.
And Jim Cropsey has, I connected him with Superior Fence, and he's contracted with Superior Fence to separately install a gate that will, you know, match at the end. So that's where we're at with that. If you're good with that rail, then we'll get started on that project. I also put in your packet first draft of the 2020 town warrant, and I noted, I won't read through those, you can look at that yourself, I noted the changes. And the one thing I did want to bring up is last year there was some discussion about transferring Bittern Lane over to MB Tractor, and I wanted to find out, I wanted to circle back and find out if that's something you want me to pursue, or are you good with where we're at? Because there was a little piece of land, you remember, that the town owned, that there was discussion about transferring that to MB Tractor. You don't have to think about, you don't have to give me an answer now, but just because I don't want to lose the, if we're going to put it in, I want to be prepared for it. February election, we did hear from the superintendent who's agreed to open the high school for the February 2020 election. I have spoken with the moderator and the town clerk tax collector, and they both support that location for the election, and I would like to get, if I could, from you some kind of idea if you're supportive of that, so I can
Yes.
lock that in.
Same place?
Yes.
High school, yeah.
Yes.
I
Okay,
agree.
thank you. Birch Hill Kennels, I didn't at the time last week, I haven't looked at it today, but I needed a couple more signatures on that contract if you haven't signed it.
I believe that's,
Also in your file is the stipend policy for boards, committees, and commissions. If you could sign off on that. And then I think also in your paperwork, well, I didn't get Jim to fill it out, but we need to get Jim Cropsey's paperwork filled out for being on the Conservation Commission, and Catherine's paperwork filled out to be the new Budget Committee person. Did you find that? Should have been in there somewhere.
Oh my gosh, did I sign my own?
Oh, I remember where it was.
Leanne's, wasn't it?
Did you find the stipend policy in there?
Yeah, the stipends in there,
Yep.
and that's been covered. Everybody but Joe.
You saw a copy of the Tilton Times.
I'm looking for Jim's,
Look, you don't have it because I have it.
okay.
This is,
What's that?
Well, this is mine. You
yeah,
have to fill it out.
yes. And I'll have to
Is that
get
yours?
Jim Cropsey to fill out his, if you could just sign off on his. And also in your FYI, I just noted that the 6 of the 12 no parking signs have gone have been installed on the tree streets. I did confirm with Kevin that they're continuing to cut back the shrubbery, so there's a good line of sight. And last week, it should still be in your packet, I gave you some examples of ways to mark the sidewalk. I don't know if anyone remembers this. Are you good with this? Instead of a crosshatch on the sidewalk on the tree streets. This was acceptable, the MUCTD, whatever.
Did they have a spacing between the persons lying on the sidewalk? Is it
Yeah.
like 25 feet or something? 20
I
feet?
had asked the officer about that today, and he's gonna check into
Okay.
it. So you're all good with this?
Yes.
That won't happen till the spring.
Gee, I wonder why.
So that's it for me, unless you have questions.
I did.
Yep.
Last week I mentioned to put in a work order for the sidewalk because it was a safety issue with trees. A tree had fallen and it was broken on the
This
sidewalk.
was on Cedar Street.
Yeah,
I did put that in.
okay. It hasn't been done yet, so.
So I'll just remind the board that DPW is down one person, and they do have these projects in their queue, so they're getting to things as quickly as they can. But I did right after you asked me to do.
Okay, but if we have a safety issue and it's a known safety issue with children walking on the sidewalk, I'm wondering now what priority that we put on that. That's my only question. Because I can't physically move those, because I have an injury, but otherwise I would remove them. The leaves aren't too much, but the leaves are covering these branches that are, 4 or 5 inches in diameter, and they might be, 4 or 5 feet long, and the leaves are covered over them so that the children aren't going to see them walking. That's my only concern. And it's just a small portion of Cedar Street, but the entire Cedar Street sidewalk from Maple Court from the first driveway on Cedar Street where Bob Sod is, down to Winter Street is covered with leaves that come off of, Husman's property.
Is this still on Cedar Street?
Yeah, it comes off of
Okay.
Winter Street property onto Cedar Street. It's just, I can go and do it if I didn't have an injury, I would go and do it myself, but
Oh,
I'm just concerned with the kids walking this. There's 16 to 18 kids that get the bus there. And they're all like 1st to 4th graders.
okay. I just, another request. And I have a meeting with them tomorrow, so I'll ask them about it.
What's this? Is this yours?
Hmm?
Catherine, is that yours?
That's yours.
John, I remembered what I had to say.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you?
The stipend policy? Is
It
that-
should be in, to be signed.
Okay, thanks.
And you all set, Jamie?
I am.
Well, Pat is remembered.
I remembered, I just wanted to say a thank you to the Tilton School once again. Yesterday and the day before, they took a class, I guess it was the cross-country team yesterday, out and raked leaves for the seniors again. Once again, they came out for our seniors, and I just want to thank them. And Highway has already been notified to pick up the bags.
Excellent. Ned?
Before and after the retreat.
All we have, was there something?
Yes, if you would permit me
And you have,
3.5 minutes.
and you have the last set of minutes, just FYI.
Timing you.
That, I will be very quick. That is a tax anticipation note, the last one we'll do before the balance of bills, and we'll probably pay it off very quickly. I just wanted to pass out to you, as the tax bills are going out, there were some questions about the distribution of parcels between residential and commercial, so I worked up, and attached to my analysis on the front are the actual reports from Avatar behind it for 2018 and 2019. And what it demonstrates in the top portion is the residential. And if you look, you can see the residential land and buildings went up an average of 26.8%. The commercial industrial land and buildings went up an average of 15.2%. The total increase, according to these reports, shows our value went up 20.3%. So essentially, the residential there was more of a shift to residential versus commercial industrial in this assessment, reassessment year 2019. So I just thought it would be helpful for the board to have a little more insight as to that. And you can read the reports for yourself. I just summarized the report data on this front sheet to show you the difference. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Tim.
What's in the back?
Those are the actual reports from Avatar from last year and this year.
There you go.
Is that one? Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
We have minutes of Thursday, October 31st. Anybody wants to bring that to the table? Or do you want to wait until?
I have one thing, it can be now or later. You make a motion to bring Thursday, October 31st, to table for discussion. Do we have to make a motion to bring?
No.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
I wouldn't
It's
vote on
always
it.
awkward when I do that.
Joe likes to do that.
Comes out of my mouth and I go,
Yeah.
on page 2, Selectman Justman. I would like to add doesn't have to be all of, but what I said to resolve that, I said so it ends, discussion of compacted by contractor, and that the project is still ongoing. Could we just add a little more of that, I mean, I do have the pictures, they were compacting, you know, I pretty well resolved it, that there isn't an issue.
You did state you observed them doing it and that they were doing it in layers.
Right.
Remember that?
Right, and I'd like to see some of that in there rather than it still, one could go away reading this that it wasn't resolved.
Okay.
But, yeah, Selectman Dawson. Observed.
Thank you.
motion to approve the minutes of October 31st as amended.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I think that's it. Anything else before the board?
Catherine?
You can go first.
Can I approach the bench, Your Honor?
Sure, come on down. Here, have a cookie. We got cookies today. You need
Well, I
cookie?
could make my dental plan. This is difficult for me, because it's easier to talk back there, but in all fairness, I owe it to this board and I owe it to the committee that you've appointed me to in the Police Building Study Committee. I've tried to be a good steward, and with every budget committee I sat on, and I think about, what's it gonna cost? What's my fair share, and what do I have to do to afford a fire station? Or what do I have to do to afford a police station? Or what do I have to do to, I definitely wanna feel like I'm a contributor to that, and, part of, we're getting to the finish line on some numbers where actually Tim can figure out what that impact is, and we all have to do that, right? I mean, that's part of living in town and being a taxpayer. So, I'm teeing up for that, and, tighten my belt here or there and do some things, but I opened my tax bill, and as many of you have, and in all fairness, I'm not thrilled with the fact that I pay $8,000 a year, or had been, and so my first half was around $4,000. My second half should have been around $4,000, and I opened it, it's over $6,000. So that's $2,000 that I have to pull out of thin air. I know we had talked about seniors being on fixed incomes. I work for the state of New Hampshire. Let's talk about step increases. There's no merit. There's no, I'm not going to go out in nights and sling burgers and try to reel in $2,000 extra. So with that in mind, I have to now resign from the police building committee, because I'm not talking about tightening my belt for $150 or $200 a year to build a building. I'm talking about finding a pair of pants to go with that belt. This is the $2,000 is going to hit us pretty hard. In all fairness, I don't think I can come up with $150 for the building, or for, a fire station, things like that. So, rather than remain on that committee and be ineffective or be a mole or any kind of drawdown to that committee, even though my think is great, I will still attend those meetings from the cheap seats. I will resign in writing. You can vote on it at your next meeting. We do not have a committee meeting Monday because of the holiday. The following meeting will be, in all fairness, I want you guys to have time to find somebody to replace it or choose to go without the position. Attendance issues have been a challenge lately for this committee. I'm trying to get a quorum. The chair's done a great job. Vice chair attendance is not there. We had to go through a meeting most recently where I was assured that we would have one member of leadership of that committee to run the meeting. I came in 35 minutes late when most of the important stuff was done. And, Pat did a good job taking the ball and facilitating the meeting. But so I don't know if you want to fill the slot or not, because that changes your math for a quorum. But it's been a privilege. But math is math. I can't support it financially with a hit like this on my tax bill. I can't take anything further. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about it, but now I have to go the other way and come at it very hard against it. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be railing hard on this project to not have it hit our tax bills. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, thanks for, you did incredible amounts of work on this.
It's tough. I'm very passionate about this project.
It's just,
There's, I've watched this board, not all of you, but it's a 3-2 situation. There's times when spending is out of control. I watched this board on a 3-2 spend an exorbitant amount of payroll, and rather than 91 day, I'll casually ask what's our 1 day payroll exposure times 2 to give 2 holidays right? You know, we talked about this, what's our deal, what's the cost per day to run payroll? Now we're gonna get 2 days away rather than throwing a party. I could eat a lot of, on a day's pay, I could eat a lot of Christmas food, so I think the party would have been a cheaper option, and I know there's morale to be kept and employees to take care of, because if we take care of the employees, they take care of the customers, and everything else takes care of itself, but, and then March is coming, and I'm gonna run, and Joe asked me the other day, you gonna run? I'm gonna run every year until I get it, because I think, the spending needs to get dialed in a lot of places, if possible. But anyway,
Just so you know, I did ask for that information. It's coming.
yeah, it's a good way to make decisions, and, even with, with 2 no votes, I think there should have been an ask of, well, what's it cost to run the town every day? What's our payroll, right, every day? And what's that now? So, but anyways, I'll draft something up for you guys to have in writing for that committee, but, sorry I can't be for it, I just can't afford to make it happen for me. But I want to know whose bill went down $2,000, because, somebody's making that okay.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I am so disappointed, but I understand.
Yeah,
You're gonna be very different. I don't think we can replace you.
Yeah,
We can find somebody else, but I
It
don't
was
think
too
we
big a
can
sticker
replace
shock
you.
even to try to make it all work.
That's a huge hit.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, folks, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
So, to go back to the conversation we were having earlier about the park commission and communication, you wanted it not to be in at that time, so I thought I'd wait. Judy and I had a conversation this morning on how that communication could take place without leaving the town administrator out of the loop and, getting things done. And I believe we came up with a good plan. I'm going to communicate through Jeannie, and then she will communicate to Kevin, and I believe that will work. For whoever the park commissioner has, it happens to be me right now, but that's not always going to be the case, so whoever it is. So if you don't have any objections, we will try this on and see how it works. The Christmas event is coming up, and there has to be a communication between parks and public works. And it doesn't matter if it goes through Jeannie, it's still a communication to flow through. And the town administrator should know what's going on in town. And I think it's a win-win. So we'll see how, continue to work on it and get through this Christmas event. It'll be great.
Christmas.
Busy time of year.
We got a lot done tonight, and I think we came up with some good solutions for some of our residents too. So,
Nice when we all work together, huh?
yes, you ready? I'm ready.
Motion?
No, we gotta wait for Joe. He does that.
I know.
I know, there's something
Gonna be here a while. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.